Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a period of history that is, I mean, it's so catastrophic, so fundamentally disruptive to the established order that it really reads less like a political shift and more like a perfect storm, a cataclysm.
It really is. We're talking about the years 1332 to 1334 IC, and what makes this moment so unique is that the Eternal Empire wasn't just attacked; it was simultaneously torn apart from the inside and invaded from the outside.
It's this collision of two massive forces. You've
Yeah.
got the internal purity rebellion and then this huge external invasion, the Karui Unification.
What's fascinating here is the sheer complexity of the failure. The empire didn't just fall due to a single mistake. It was, you could say, pulled apart by what we're calling the double helix of war.
A double helix. I like that.
Yeah, you have this internal force driven by, ideology and a deep fear of technology, and then you have an external force driven by conquest, by this thirst for mainland territory.
And our sources, they almost force us to act like forensic scene analysts, don't they? We have to scrutinize every little detail, the moment-to-moment motivations and the power dynamics behind these huge historical figures like King Kham and High Templar Vol.
Exactly. Our mission today is to really chronicle the downfall of the Gemling democracy. We have to meticulously track the calculated cruelty, the betrayals, and you have to admit the strategic brilliance that allowed all of this to happen.
Right, how King Kham achieved this incredible conquest, maybe the greatest the Karui had ever seen.
While High Templar Vol was leveraging that same brutality to consolidate his own power through purification.
This whole wave of destruction, it starts with the philosophical incompatibility, right? It's not just about land or power, not at first.
It's a fundamental clash of worldviews. On one side, you have the Gemling thaumaturgy of Emperor Chitus, which really represents absolute technological hubris, the belief that humanity can become gods.
Then on the other.
The fierce, almost desperate, pure faith of Vol. It's a deeply held religious conviction. And we're going to see how that clash plays out through, a high-stakes duel on the sand, a betrayal on a cliff face, and a desperate pact made by men who, at the end of the day, feared getting old more than they feared damnation itself.
It's a tragedy built on arrogance and terror. So let's start with the inside job, the core rot that made the Empire vulnerable in the first place.
High Templar Vol of Thebris. This whole thing starts with him.
It was this fundamental disagreement
Right?
about humanity's relationship with power, with divinity.
And that philosophical chasm could not have been wider. I mean, look at Emperor Chitus and the Gembling ruling class. They didn't just use technology, they revered it. It was their path to becoming gods.
The sources say Chitus saw Gemling technology as the pinnacle of human progress, that had brought them within spitting distance of godhood.
Think about what that means. Just stop and think about the political statement you're making there. The ruling class is explicitly framing themselves through their tech as divine or near divine. They're setting themselves completely apart from the common person.
It's the ultimate act of self-deification, and it creates this massive, profound alienation.
And that's the opening Vol needed. He saw this not just as a mistake or, hubris. He saw it as an abomination, a blasphemy.
He demanded the entire empire be, what was the phrase, cleansed of the stain of thaumaturgy.
Yes, his motive was about making the empire pure again. He believed the Gemlings had soiled this sacred heritage, and that conviction, that's the key here.
Because the story the surviving Gemlings told was that Vol just soared to power on the smoke of burning witches. They tried to paint him as a fanatic.
Right, a chaotic, bloodthirsty fanatic, but the Chronicle shows a reality that is far more calculated and, frankly, far more dangerous.
He wasn't some reckless zealot just burning fortune tellers.
No. The Chronicle is very clear. His power was built on genuine, righteous devotion to faith and country. He had a very clear, very defined enemy, the Gemling Themocracy, and a compelling moral justification for everything he did. He was a strategic thinker. He knew that conviction is the fuel for mass political mobilization.
And that righteousness gave him legitimacy. He didn't just stir up the rabble. He co-opted the empire's own governing infrastructure.
Precisely. He forged this formidable coalition of key political figures. This wasn't a fringe movement. This was the establishment turning on the ruling class.
The coalition itself, it's not a protest group. It's the institutional spine of the empire. We should probably break down the players here, because it shows how thorough his planning really was.
Okay, so you can sort of cluster them by the power they commanded. First, he secures the political heart of Sarn. He gets Lord Mayor Ondar.
Which is huge. That means the day-to-day function of the capital, the bureaucracy, it now follows Vol, not Chitus. You can't run a revolution if the mail stops running.
Exactly. Then he goes for the hearts and minds. He gets Victerio, the people's poet.
The propaganda machine. Victerio was the voice of the common man. He could frame Vol's radical religious views as something relatable, something necessary. He turned the Purity Rebellion into a popular uprising through narrative.
Next, legitimacy. The most important piece, arguably. He brings in Archbishop Geoffrey of Frisia.
And that gives him the religious sanction he needs to declare the Gemlings heretics. Not just political opponents. It's a divine pass to commit extreme violence.
Then he expands his reach. He gets Governor Kostov of Stridevolv, so his movement isn't just isolated to the capital city.
And finally, the muscle. He secures Commander Adis of Highgate.
The military arm. If you have the regional governor and the military commander of that region, you've effectively neutralized a vast territory and secured the weapons you need for the coming civil war.
So when you put it all together, I mean, Vol wasn't just starting a rebellion. He was weaponizing the entire machinery of the Eternal State against its own leaders.
And their stated goal had to be something everyone could get behind. It was to snatch this empire from the claws of devilry and return it to humanity.
By framing the Gemlings as devilry, he transformed the whole thing into a holy war. Everyone in his coalition had a moral license to commit betrayal and violence against their former rulers.
It was a perfect, calculated setup. The stage was now set for the Karui to deliver the hammer blow, but they could never have done it without this internal pressure cooker that Vol built.
It's genuinely incredible how he pulled this off while the Gemlings were apparently, just distracted by their visions of godhood?
I think so. Their hubris was a blindfold, and while the empire was rotting from within, King Kham was building an irresistible force on the outside.
And Kham's methods are just a world away from Vol's political maneuvering.
Oh, a complete contrast. Vol used rhetoric, faith, alliance building. Kham. He used pure, undeniable physical dominance. While Vol was appealing to hearts and minds, Kham was appealing to the fear of the sheer force of my axe.
It was brutal simplicity. And that's what made it so effective and so fast. The sources are crystal clear. He achieved unification not through diplomacy, not through shared goals, but by systematically slaughtering the weakest tribe leaders until the others leapt to join his cause.
It's an evolutionary mechanism, isn't it? Survival of the fittest, but the fitness test is just whether you're smart enough to align with the strongest predator.
This hierarchy, based entirely on strength and lethality, it's central to his success. It's a meritocracy of muscle. And this is what forged the mighty horde, described with terrifying hyperbole as the greatest the world has ever known.
And this unification, it wasn't organic. It was instantaneous, driven by the immediate personal fear of Ko'om. You joined, or you were next. It's that simple.
To really get the scale of his genius, and you have to call it that, we need to look at the men he defeated. Because they weren't weaklings. They were powerful chieftains with their own revered systems of leadership.
Right. Ko'om's unification required crushing 3 distinct, viable Karui ideologies, and then, crucially, absorbing their best parts.
Let's start with Kilauea of the Volako tribe. The Herald of War, he called himself.
An old man, 74. But he was the first one to see the existential threat facing the Karui tribes long before Ko'om was even on the scene.
His internal thoughts, they're so pragmatic.
Yeah.
And sad, in a way. He looks around and says, we're alone. He realizes the gods, like Volako, are asleep.
Right. He sees Volako not as a protector, but as a tribe mascot, a symbol, but not a source of real aid. And this spiritual and physical vulnerability, that's what spurs him to act. He sees a vacuum.
So he decides to force destiny. He finds the ancestral Volako's Cyan Topaz ring, and it's suddenly surging with this electrical power it hasn't had in generations.
And Kilauea's conclusion is, well, if the gods won't help us, I have to do it myself. He literally decides to appoint myself the Herald of War and uses that power to start winning battles. He's laying the groundwork for unification.
He was the true pioneer of this whole conquest mindset. He claimed he laid the foundations for Karui unification before Kham was even an urge in some bastard's loins.
A great line, and probably true. He started the war that Kham finished. But here's the tension in the chronicle, the tragic part. His defeat is so anticlimactic.
Yeah, he wasn't felled in some glorious duel. He was 74 years old. The account is brutally honest about it. Kham essentially bullied an old man.
It just strips away any romance. It was dominant youth crushing an aging pioneer. But the Chronicle gives us this wonderful, ironic twist in his afterlife.
In the halls of the dead, he's overcome with joy at being young and strong again.
And he's so proud of his unacknowledged bloodline. He speculates that half the warriors serving under them might be descended from me. His real legacy is pervasive, genetic, even if it's entirely uncredited.
So that's the visionary. Then you have Okoye of the Ngamahu tribe, the measured warrior. He's the total opposite. He represents tradition, discipline, ritual.
And this presents a completely different challenge for Kam. He can't just bully Okoye. He has to beat him at his own game.
And the chronicle of that duel is a masterclass in Karui ritual. It's not a chaotic brawl. It starts at sunrise, both war hosts watching. But only Okoye and Kam fight.
It's all about singular dominance, proving legitimacy through personal strength. And the details are amazing. The fight lasts until nightfall, but they call hourly truces for food and drink.
It's this deeply respected ancient test of endurance and legitimacy. It's not just murder.
And Okoye is smart. He sees Kam's arrogance, how the younger man overextends himself, and he makes him pay with these precise, calculated strikes. But the problem for Okoye is Kam's sheer raw strength. It just forces him onto the defensive constantly.
It becomes this grueling test of will. By nightfall, they're moving like turtles, just exhausted.
And Okoye finally sees an opening. He wounds Kam, a heavy blow to the chest. But here's the chilling insight from the Chronicle. Kam made this an acceptable sacrifice on purpose.
He was willing to be gravely wounded. He planned it.
He planned it. He knew that taking a serious injury would lull Okoye into an offensive posture, giving him that one decisive moment.
That is a level of ruthless calculation that is just terrifying. Prioritizing the ultimate victory over your own immediate survival.
And it works. With Okoye exposed, Kam doesn't use his axe blade. He breaks Okoye's knee with the axe handle, ends the fight, instantly, painfully.
Okoye gets his warrior's death. But Kaum gets the Ngamahu's sign ruby ring. He inherits the mantle of aggressive, fire-like expansion. He's learned to use pain as a tool.
And finally, you have Rakiata of the Tasalio tribe, the elegant flow. If Okoye was tradition, Rakiata is something else entirely. He's the philosophical opposite of Kam.
He saw warfare as an elegance, an ebb and flow like the tide. A dance, he called his method the flow.
Right, and he looked at Okoye's stuffy traditions as completely outdated. Rakiata's whole history is about self-reliance and merit.
He was just 13 when he had to fight an eternal army. His father, the chieftain, was killed. Rakiata repels the army, saves his people, and then he refuses the chieftain mantle.
He refuses it. But they follow him anyway. His authority is based purely on his actions, on his merit. He rejects the inherited power structure that Kaum is so good at exploiting.
His relationship with the divine is the same. He finds Teslio's sign sapphire ring, a gift from the god of water.
But he never used it. The Chronicle makes a point of saying that. He relied only on his own strength and cunning. He actively rejects any outside power. He is the ultimate individualist.
And that leads to maybe the most chilling consequence of this whole unification process. When Kaum defeats him, he takes his head, which is customary, but he also takes Rakiata's hand.
And that's not a trophy. Think about the strategic depth of that decision. It's a tactical acquisition.
He's confirming that the fighting style, the flow, was more valuable to him than the warrior himself.
He ensures his new mighty horde can integrate Rakiata's movements, his philosophy, into their own training. He's literally absorbing the best tactical aspects of the people he crushes.
So Kaum isn't just conquering the Karui. He's systematically upgrading the Karui military machine by taking the unique strengths of every leader he defeats.
So you have Kiloava's vision, Okoye's discipline, Rakiata's tactical innovation. Kaum becomes the sum of all these parts. And that is the unstoppable force that Vol so desperately needed to smash the Empire's southern flank.
Which brings us to Lion Eye's Watch, the pivotal event. This is where the two forces, Vol's internal schism and Kaum's external army, finally converge.
And the target, Marcius Lioneye, he wasn't just some commander. He was a living symbol of everything Vol hated and everything Kaum wanted to crush.
Right. He commanded the southernmost eternal legions. He's a celebrated hero of the Empire. But the sources also call him a notorious slaver. So he embodies both the power and the deep moral rot of the Gemling administration.
And physically, he was the embodiment of the thaumacrity. They called him Lioneye because his left eye was replaced with a golden-hued gem.
He is literally the stain of thaumaturgy that Vol was rallying against.
As one of the sources bitterly notes, his head was destined to make quite the pretty adornment for King Kaum's belt.
Okay, so let's get into the invasion itself. Lavyonga's Chronicle captures the sense of, overwhelming fate when Kaum lands.
It does. His war host hits the sand with the force of destiny. The text even suggests his forces tamed the wild sea just by showing up. It's this momentous, terrifying arrival.
But Lioneye, he starts off completely confident. He's standing on the walls, looking down at what he just sees as savages.
And with a fire-burning brash in his golden eye, he fires one arrow into the pitch-dark sky. Just one. And with that, he eliminates Kaom's hope of surprise.
He's completely in control, or so he thinks.
His confidence is rooted in a fatal tactical mistake. It comes from this massive cultural blind spot he has. He has experience-born confidence that the Karui do not use archers.
Because of the Tabukai, the sacred prohibition. It forbade Karui warriors from using projectile weapons. It was a centuries-old code of honor.
And Kaom knew this tradition better than Lioneye did. This is where the deception begins. Kaom attacks, he deliberately absorbs some heavy losses, and then he fakes a chaotic, disorganized retreat.
He's using his own men as bait.
He's baiting the trap, knowing Lioneye's arrogance and his perceived cultural superiority will dictate his next move.
And Lioneye takes the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. He thinks he's moving in for the kill to rout a fleeing enemy, so he orders his heavily armored legionnaires to drop their broad-stroke heavy shields.
They trade protection for speed. They're convinced the battle is already won. The Sarn Knights who relied on that protective magic, they paid dearly for that mistake.
Lioneye's rigid belief in his enemy's weakness and their sacred code, it completely blinded him. He trusted their honor more than his own tactical sense.
And that's when the trap springs. This is the moment where the full, deep coordination of the Volcom Alliance is just laid bare. This wasn't a convenient distraction. It was a perfectly executed maneuver built on betrayal.
The source confirms this shocking detail. At Kaom's request, Hiri, one of his most trusted warriors, had traveled all the way to Thebris, to Vol's city.
To study archery with Vol's finest military tutors, stop and think about that, the internal rebel leadership of the empire was actively training the external invaders in advanced imperial warfare. It was the ultimate act of treason.
So when the legionnaires are finally exposed, shields gone, Hiri and her bowwomen break cover from the cliffs above.
And they unleash this relentless barrage of arrows. The Chronicle describes them as tipped with a poisoned hatred only oppression can ferment. This wasn't just a military action. It was cold, calculated revenge for generations of enslavement.
But there's a cost. Lavianga highlights it. Hiri broke the sacred code. She broke the Tavukai. She was, in the eyes of her own people, damning herself.
But Kaom, the ultimate pragmatist, seized her sacrifice and in doing so, seized victory. He understood that tradition means nothing when weighed against the utility of conquest.
The consequence was immediate and absolute. Lioneye's legionnaires fought to the last man, despite the overwhelming odds, but they were slaughtered.
And Kaom secures the entire southern coast. He establishes the first Karui settlement on the mainland. And to cement his victory, he honors Lioneye's bravery by wearing the commander's bejeweled, gem-enhanced head on his belt, a clear message to everyone
That both imperial heroism and gemling technology had been crushed.
The victory at Lioneye's watch wasn't just a military breakthrough. It was a signal that the rules of civilization had just irrevocably changed. And it instantly triggers this chain reaction of moral degradation and horrifying consequences for everyone involved.
Let's start with the new Karui order. The sources are just unsparing about the brutality.
Yeah.
They swept through the watch so quickly that no one had a chance to flee. Men, women, children, slaughtered.
It wasn't a disciplined occupation, it was a purge. And Diala's observation captures the chilling reality of it. Kaom butchered them no matter how desperately they bleeded, and the symbolism of his cruelty was immediate and terrifying.
He adorned his doorways with the heads of women and children.
Right, and that act of non-discriminatory violence, it instantly blurs the line between conqueror and savage, and it raises that terrifying question for anyone left alive. What makes a hero or a villain?
But it wasn't random, was it? It was intentional. It was about solidifying his conquest through profound cruelty.
Absolutely. He orders the desecration of the eternal dead. He wants to ensure no rest or honors for the wicked. He is trying to remove the eternal stain, not just militarily, but spiritually, from the land itself.
So that's what's happening at the Watch. But what about the survivors? The soldiers who got away?
We get this devastating psychological portrait from an unknown legionnaire. A man whose entire life was built on order and structure, now facing total chaos. His internal crisis is just so stark. Everyone is dead, and I am alone.
The immediate problem is survival. But the fear of the Empire, even as it's dying, is still stronger than his fear of the wilds.
The penalty for desertion was terrifying. You'd be branded a coward, imprisoned, and then hung. He couldn't go home. He couldn't seek refuge from the very empire he was serving.
So he's trapped.
He's trapped. And forced to abandon civilization, he makes this immediate moral collapse. He chooses self-serving violence. His words are, "I will take what I need by force."
And that single consequence, it marks the instantaneous moral degradation of the survivors. The empire's own institutional terror drove its people into savagery.
Exactly. They would become monsters in the wilds, mirroring the very brutality of the Karui they were trying to flee.
So as the Karui advance continues relentlessly, the chronicle says, "Still the Karui barbarians advance upon us. The remaining imperial forces, they know Lionai has failed. They plan a desperate retreat through Prisoner's Gate."
They need a powerful, unassailable defense to buy time. And this is where desperation reaches its absolute peak, and it leads to one of the most ironic acts of self-destruction in this whole saga.
Chevron. She races to Brutus, the warden of Axiom Prison. He's her last hope.
And Brutus is this legendary, terrifying figure, the boogeyman of Rayclast, famous for his cruel streak and the fact that no one had ever escaped his prison.
But for all his power, Brutus was deeply insecure. His fatal flaw was hubris and this desperate desire to conquer the ravages of time.
As he got older and his strength began to fade, the thought of mortality drove him mad. He sought immortality, he believed, so he could continue his duties as jailer forever.
And this desperation leads him to a pact with necromancers. He lets them experiment on him.
He thinks he's just securing eternal vigilance. But the moment of revelation is pure tragedy. As his flesh swells and ruptures, he realizes the terrifying truth. He is just another test subject.
And Chevron is there. She witnesses this. The Chronicle has this profound description of her. She held sanity in her right hand and revelation in her left. She watches him choose.
And his choice is definitive. He rejects mortality. He chooses the left hand, the monstrous, dark, irreversible path of twisted power.
He transforms into this hideous, hulking mutant, but his first act isn't against the Karui.
No, it's savage retribution. He bursts his bonds and descends on the necromancers who did this to him, tearing through them in this blinding, bloody rage. He leaves none of them alive.
And here is the ultimate irony. Brutus then just rampages through the entire prison level. When word gets down to the lower levels, the remaining Imperial guards, they make the only choice they can, the self-preserving choice.
They bar the gates, they lock the monster in the topmost level.
The immediate chilling consequence of Brutus's transformation is an unintended defense.
The Empire's greatest jailer, tortured and sealed away, now pounds his fists into a raw, meaty pulp in a mad rage to escape. He became an impassable living barrier to the Karui, created by his own tortured anguish. They use their own monster as their final shield.
So we've completed this harrowing chronicle. And the story of the Purity Rebellion and the Karui Unification is really, it's a masterclass in mutually enabling disasters.
It absolutely is. Vol effectively outsourced the dirty work to Combe. He paid for the destruction of the Gemling command structure with territory and freedom for the Karui.
And in turn, Kaum used Vol's internal political distraction, the civil war brewing in Sarn, to secure the southern coast completely unopposed by the Empire's main armies.
It was the greatest conquest the Karui had ever seen, and it was only possible because the Empire was already actively destroying itself from the inside.
The sources show the swift, devastating price of overconfidence. You see it so clearly with Marcius Lionai, his fatal reliance on an outdated tradition, the Tavukai, to inform his tactics.
He lost his life because he trusted his enemy's honor more than he trusted his own intelligence.
And we saw the inevitable dominance of brute strength over old rules. Kaum didn't just defeat chieftains like Akoya and Rakiata, he strategically absorbed their unique styles.
He proved that tradition is secondary to utility and raw power. He learned to break sacred codes through Hiri and incorporate his defeated foes' techniques, like Rakiata's hand, to ensure his own dominance.
And finally, that terrifying cost of desperation. You see it in Brutus. He didn't succumb to dark arts for tyranny or power. He did it to keep doing his job, to avoid the ravages of time.
And that pursuit of immortality led directly to his eternal imprisonment and suffering. An ultimate sacrifice that paradoxically ended up protecting the very forces that had doomed him.
The entire saga is a clear picture of how a civilization destroys itself. The Eternal Empire fell because of its own profound internal corruption, its technological hubris, and the irresistible external force it was foolish enough to enable.
The internal schism prepared the feast, and the pure dominance of Kaum consumed it.
So what does this all mean for power structures? For us, looking back, we've seen how the Karui unified instantly through this hierarchy of pure, unquestioned dominance based on comms hacks, and we've seen the empire destroy itself through the slow, paralyzing chaos of an internal schism led by Vol.
Which brings us to our final thought, a question for you to consider. Which power dynamic, pure, unquestioned dominance, like Combs, where the source of power is clear and singular, or the widespread fragmenting chaos of internal schism like Vols, where betrayal is decentralized, is ultimately the most dangerous and the most difficult to defeat for a reigning civilization? Think about that choice and what kind of threat you would rather face.